Justice Minister Haidar in 2006 said, this is the Justice Minister, we are allowed to destroy everything in the court. And today, 8 years after Lebanon War, 66 years after the Palestinian Nakba, 66 years after the Daras and Deir Yassin massacre, and 58 years after 56 massacres of Ranch Attila, we still find that the Israeli logic and policies are the same. The inaction of international community is the same, as well as the do-nothing government policies that maintains and feeds the suffering of the Palestinians. Shujayea movie that we watched minutes ago should not and must not leave us shattered, but it should remind us that military occupation, as well as colonial power or dictatorship, do not lead by their own will or their own initiatives. They have to be forced to do that. They have to be forced to do that. And we have also to remember that to change, nothing has changed, because we have to be part of that change. Nothing would change on all these fronts until we make that change. The horror of Shujayea massacre that we watched minutes ago should remind us that we have obligations and responsibilities as people with conscience towards what we saw today. We have to intensify our actions and our work, to learn more, to educate ourselves and educate others, to do more BDS, to speak up on behalf of the voiceless, because our voice do count. Shujayea massacre, Beit Hanun massacre, Rafah massacre, Khan Yunis massacre are all bleak and black marks in 2014. It's also bleak marks in the human history. And if we speak about that, we should also speak about the Palestinian people. It's a bright mark, because this brutal attack showed the will of the Palestinian people, who do not submit, who fight back, who resist, and who won't give up. It also showed us the clear light, the free will, or the free people who went into the streets in tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands in London, in North America, in Europe, in Middle East, all spoke the will of people, mere people. They burst into the streets against the slaughter of Gaza. Their message has been loud, and it has been well received by Palestinians. Summer attack was on unbelievable level. It was aggression on the helpless, defenseless, occupied, and besieged population of Gaza. It was an aggression in civilians, mostly civilians, the population of the Gaza Strip. So it's not about Hamas, as they say, as the Western media try to predict. It was on the Palestinian people. There has been over 520 children killed in this operation, which means Israel killed 10 children, average 10 children every day, each day, all through the 50 days operation in Gaza. This was an aggression on the Palestinian infrastructure, the Palestinian mosques, Palestinian hospitals, Palestinian clinics, Palestinian homes. It wasn't Hamas as they keep depicting or putting, the same picture. It was even broader than that. It was an attack on humanity. It was an attack on international law. It was an attack on Geneva Convention. It was an attack on humanity. It was an attack on all of us. And it wasn't a surprise when Russell Tribunal, at the beginning of this month, when it found evidence, clear evidence, that Israel committed wars, war crimes, wars against crimes against humanity, murder, and also incitement to genocide. In the coming 20 minutes, I intend to speak about my trip to Gaza, the 35 days that I spent there, and also reflect on the 8 days of the Hudna, the ceasefire, the 1 week of terror and war that I lived there, till they signed the open-ended ceasefire, until I then left Gaza on the 15th of September. On the 8th of August, I left Canada heading to Gaza. Traveling was not an easy decision, and I have among the crowd dear friends who came and said, Ghada, don't do it. It's very dangerous. And I got the advice, and I heard it, and I knew it, that I am going to take a very difficult decision. But having done everything I could do here in Canada, I could not, feel that I could stay here and live normal life while all my family, my immediate, community, the camp, all my nation are getting slaughtered. I could not imagine in a minute that I would get the news that one immediate member of my family has been killed or severely wounded. The words of Dr. Martin Luther King kept echoing in my head, that there was a time when one needs to take a decision or a position that is neither politic nor safe, but one should take it because it's right. And at that point of time, I felt Dr. King's words deeply. It wasn't a safe decision, it was a politic decision, but I thought that was the right decision for me at that point of time. I get into Gaza on the 11th of August. It was the first day in the temporary 3-day ceasefire that was signed between the resistance factions and Israel. Crossing to Gaza, as I said, was one of the scariest trips for me, because you are now in Sinai Desert. You are half an hour from Al Arish, you are half an hour, 20 minutes from Rafah. There's lots of checkpoints, there's lots of waiting, there's lots of queues, there's lots of shooting, and you don't know whether you will get in or you won't. And when I reached Rafah, there has been like 50 people. Most of them has lost family members. And the unspeakable horror was depicted in each one of these people's faces. Even the children usually, they want to buy this and that. It was complete silence. Every one of us waiting. Will they allow us to get in, or would they tell us back? 11 people were allowed to cross. The restriction at that moment, only Palestinian passport holders are allowed to get into Gaza. Unfortunately, there has many people who are, displaced because they have been outside Gaza in 1956 or 1948 or 1967 when Israel occupied, and then they became displaced. They don't have a Palestinian ID. Then they do not have the right to hold a Palestinian passport, so they can. The Egyptians rather document with the Jordanian document. But they are Palestinians and they have families in Gaza. And at that moment, there has been a man, I don't know his name, I wish I could talk to him, whom his wife has been killed, and 2 children are in hospital. And he wanted to come to be with his family, to say goodbye to his wife. And he has been turned back. I could see the toy, the plastic bag he's bringing to one of his children. And the man broke in tears. He was escorted because, the Egyptians, they have the rules. And you just question the humanity, you question the rules. What on earth, a man, his wife, is killed, and he's going to be in her funeral, and he got denied. The destruction on both sides of Salahuddin Road, and that's the main road that connects Gaza from south to north, was beyond description. The unspeakable horror was in each face I could spot from the window of the car. Al-Bahar Street that leads to my camp, which is next to lots of United Nations school, which became shelters for the homeless people, was full. I would say tens of thousands of people just running. People would like to as you see in Shujayea, looking for missing members of their families. People just go to bury their dead, people just going to get water, people going shopping, people going to buy stuff. You feel the panic, and you look around you. And I arrived at the camp, and my mom, my grandmother, my brothers, everyone, greeting me with tears and with smiles. How did you come? And I toured the camp, and I learned there that my neighbor home has been bombarded. Tawfiq Jabr, he spent all his life in Saudi Arabia, 30 years of hard work till he built the home, and then in a minute, an instant, it's been hit by a missile by F-16 to turn it into rubbles. Unfortunately, because the blast is so hard, it also severely damaged my uncle home, who just, finished all the decoration in the nice home in the 2013. And I had a journalist accompanying me at that minute, and I want to show you part of that clip.
ما صورتش هالقد انه فكرت اشي صح قالوا لي هون الاشي الاخر مش كل شيء. طب الضربة هي يعني انت ما صار شيء بس
This is the home of the neighbor, and I am standing at my uncle's home. So the blast was so heavy that it also get into the home of my uncle and demolished or destroyed all this part. This is the picture where we stand. Now we're moving towards one of the bedrooms of his daughters.
This is the room of the figure summer. Summer to the last day. It's by America.
هذا كان أنا جمعوا مع حركناش أو فاز الموقع في الجهاد.
Can you remove this window? They haven't removed it. It just moved by itself from the pressure of the explosion. It just moved. Can't you really imagine what was it? Because home, this is your memories. This is your flesh. This is your life. You build it bit by bit of fiber, and it has everything in it books. And it's different when you report about someone else's home, when it's your home or your uncle's home. Because my uncle has been working day and night. His wife as well, they built it, as I said, from their sweat, from their blood, with everything, with the furniture. Yes, they're happy, they're good, that all their children survived, but at the end of the day, they're homeless. This is not a home for a place that we can say can live, they can live. This is their bedroom. This is their bedroom. So everything is gone. This is a better scene of the neighbors' home. When we say like a neighbor home, it's a place for like 4 or 5 families. It's not like for a single family. It's for his children, his mother-in-law, his grandparents. So that's the scene. Another and I came last summer. We ate here, and they just finished all the painting and all these fine decorations. And it was beautiful. You feel proud after all this hard work that you have a place to stay and to enjoy and to invite guests. And it's really very, very, very hard. I think all the time I say it's one of the harshest and most painful things to walk in the ruins of your home. This is my feeling now when when my grandmother used to say how they shelled Biddaras and how they left the home. When she speaks about the sweet moments that she enjoyed there, she made her home. And now you look at their faces, at Muna's face, and the tears in her eyes and her daughters. you know very well, and you understand and you taste the feeling with the pain. And when the tears are so bitter that you cannot cry because the tears, just dry, and when you say this phrase that your heart is bleeding. And I think this is how she feels now. When you don't have any tears left in your eye, but you say it's my heart is bleeding. It's bleeding now, and I see all this destruction, and
I want now to show. This is the first day. I'm in slideshow. And this is Rafah crossing. This is what I call it Rafah Gate or Rafah Hate. When you are getting into Gaza. That's another show. And this is the scene of the two homes. And they are like in recently built homes, as I said. And usually the houses in the camp, some of them are built in the 50s or 60s or 70s. That's my grandmother. And her home is built in the 50s. So you would notice the cracks that the blast caused for her home. And also here the destruction. And also the issue when you get this, what they call it, knock on the roof warning to tell you, move, evacuate the house. The family got this warning 3 times. One in the middle of the night, and one early morning, and one at the end of the day. And they have, and every time they are given 10 minutes to evacuate. Then you have to, of course, to take all your stuff and leave. And at the same time, try to shout loudly so that your neighbors know, because the blast would hit lots of the places around you. So my grandmother is disabled, she has rheumatism, she cannot walk. So for 3 times, they have to carry her. First she has to crawl on her feet and her hands. I'm sorry that I'm getting emotional. The second time they brought a wheelchair from somewhere in hospital so that they could move her. And because she cannot take it anymore, the 3rd time she told them, leave me, I want to die here, whatever happens, happens. Just don't every time just, carry me. The 3rd time they just figured it out and they put her in a mattress, and a group of young people just carried her and just ran for their lives. So it's difficult. I mean, you would imagine, you are given 10 minutes to run. Just exercise it at home and try to see what you can take and what you can leave, and how's your emotions at that time. Would you be able even to find your shoes or find your belonging? Or this is another scene of the camp. During the 9 days of the ceasefire that I witnessed in Gaza, people were finding shelters at United Nations schools. At that point of time, there has been 250,000 people finding shelters at UN schools. So there was 1 in each 7 Palestinian displaced, while other tens of thousands of people finding shelter in private homes. So people just go and donate mattresses, food, because United Nations is not equipped or cannot cope with this, sort of disaster. So school become a place to sleep, to cook. Look at the children. Look at this old woman. So some of the pictures I took from the internet. This man is sleeping. And now volunteers from all over the towns and the camps just went, to try to comfort the kids and make some, during the ceasefire, trying to play with them. But the situation was so difficult because the school, it's for children, 500, 400 children, because it's crowded. We speak about UN school, but suddenly you have tens of thousands of people, and you have, let's say, 10 toilets. So how would you go to toilet when the queue become 10, 20, 1,000 waiting? There's no showers, so you would imagine the diseases, the hygiene, the situation of the people there. If she's an old woman, and she cannot go from the 2nd floor or the 3rd floor of the schools to go to the toilet. So it was really misery. And you just look at the people and look at the faces and look at the helplessness you would see in the eyes, and you say, that can't happen. The world will not allow this to happen, but it's happening today and 66 years ago and 50 years ago and now. And not only that, but the schools have been shelled. Many people have been killed. So there has been no safe place in Gaza. No safe place in Gaza. From the second day, I was with the people. We started to cook, send food for the people here, and trying to do, our bit, running from funeral to funeral, from tragedy to tragedy. And as I said, there is no time for tears. You just, you just carry on the life. And during these 8 days, on the Tuesday, actually 19th, the ceasefire fell apart. And at that time, I was in Gaza with a journalist, and then the news. And especially at this time, I am in Gaza City, which is half an hour from Khan Yunis camp. Everyone is panicked because they need to return to their places, they need to return to their homes. So you want to find a taxi, and you feel and you hear the bombardment, and you don't know what is happening. That's another thing, because the communication is so difficult there. Yes, I have a mobile, but at the same time I cannot listen to the news because you want to keep, the battery so that you could receive call, you could send call, you want to keep it for emergency. And I arrived home. And that was one of the scariest nights, because now the 8 days of the ceasefire is done, and now the war is back, and the terror immediately the main feature of all the people. And at that night, we had to plan what to do in the likelihood of invasion, or getting this warning on the roof, who to do what, who would carry my mother as we did with my grandmother. We distributed the tasks. So I sat next to my mother's bed with my passports and my money in a small bag held to my neck, with my shoes on, fully dressed, because at any minute things could happen. I had to, to take care of my kids and carry my mom's medication, while my sister-in-law had to carry their kids, and at the same time, the valuable things of the home. And it was a very difficult night. As I said, you hear the bombardment and you don't know what is happening. There is darkness, there is no power. It's the only charger, the small light we have. It's little water, so it's the fear, it's the cries of the kids. And suddenly my mom has a pain in her kidney, and we cannot go to hospital. We just tell her, okay, calm down, take this painkiller. The morning will take you to the hospital, when we know that in the morning we will not be able to take her to the hospital. With a couple of hours we got to sleep that night, I heard in the morning the cry of one of our neighbors and distant relative. One of our family members had been assassinated in Rafah. And by the time you just want to wash your face and just go, find all the camp just ready to go to Rafah. And as a person, I said, well, but it's war. How would you go to Rafah? How would you have a taxi and just go? I said, it was like a weird question to raise at that point of time. If this man had given us his life so that Rafah border could be open so that you can get in, so that fisherman could fish, that farmer could harvest his products, would you want to be with his family, with his wife, with his kids at this critical minute? And even before you just listen to the answer, people just go, women leading, just taking whatever taxi, private, donkey cart, and just go. And the camp was empty. I just went to my grandmother and just sat with her. And you just, expecting the unexpectable, what would happen in the next. And then I found another 2 women coming to my grandmother saying, we're going to Rafah. Ghada, are you going to be with us? I said, yeah, I will go with you. And it's 15 minutes, but it's a long, long journey because it's the drone, it's the bombardment, but you feel suddenly you feel you are empowered. You are with the people. despite all this, feeling of helplessness and powerlessness, find it with people. So we went to Rafah, I found tens of thousands of people just into the streets, carrying the man and going to the cemetery. And you feel that this is the Palestinian people, these people deserve to live. They're well defying the accusation, defying one of the largest military in this world. Another difficult night was when they started to attack the neighborhood next to our camp. It's Abu Ma'ruf. And again, it's F-16 missiles. This is not warning from drones. And one missile after another, the fifth, the seventh, you feel the camp is shaking. And you don't know what is happening. And you don't know what is, if the danger is next to you, what to do at that difficult minutes. And again, imagine all of that when it is darkness and when we are, disconnected from the world. Here, I was better informed because I just looked, to listen to the radio, follow the news and the internet, and I could know what is happening. There you're disconnected, you don't know anything. And at the moment, you just try to capture the scene. If my home, this is my home, this is my son, this is the road next to my home. And I was imagining maybe in a minute if my home would be gone. And all these memories you want to capture in a minute, all these things, so that maybe in a minute everything is going to be. In a minute, 7 days, I won't expand more on these stories because you saw the horror at the movie we watched. The scene was 180-degree different in the day 26th of August. It was the ceasefire, the open-ended ceasefire that was signed at that day. And my son just came to my mother and said, "Mom, Grandma, it's like Eid. You never told me that Eid comes at night," because people were so happy celebrating, distributing sweets. And even they gave my son, he's 6 years old, like some money. And he said, they told him, "You crossed shores to be with us. You're a brave boy. Take these 2 shekels." My mom just snatched her wallet and she said, "You take another 2 shekels, Aziz, because you've been a brave boy to come all this place." And it was happening on the 26th of August. 27th of August is the next day. Gaza has a destiny again with the grief, because that's the norm. On the next morning of the 27th of August, revealed the horror and the destruction. People now are free to go to visit their places and to see and to bury the dead people. So I had a chance to tour the strip and to see. Here are scenes of the destruction in Shujayea. This is another place that has that Israelis brutally attacked during the operation. This is a house of Abdel Karim Abu Salah, he's a minister, justice minister in Gaza. These are the homes of the Shujayea. This is Shujayea. This is the Zanna area in Khan Yunis. And again, you speak about hundreds of homes. In Shujayea, where we talked about 3,000 homes, 3,000 families, which means tens of thousands of homeless people. Another scene of destruction. And the issue now, there is no places for people to rent. Like, people could put like a tent like here and just to try to find a shelter and sleep. But winter is coming. My uncle find a place in our home because there is no places to rent. This is a scene of Shujayea. It's horrible. I mean, seeing is believing. This is just pictures, but when you talk to the people, and people tells you your story, you have no words to tell them. This is my son. This is another home. This is Shujayea again. Khan Yunis. Shujayea. Burned inside the home. And this area has been an agricultural area, destroyed, and homes behind, they leveled them and they covered them. And that house was used for snipers. This is the containers where the Israelis kept their bullets. And this boy, his family from Gaza, they're Judah. Today I just learned the rest of the story because on the 24th of August, when they shelled his home and killed his mom and his 4 brothers and sisters, his dad was the only survivor, and this boy is now in Germany. His name is Ta'er, and he's 9 years old. And still, until now, he doesn't know that all of his family has been killed. So every day when he calls his dad, he asks about his mom and about his family. And I remember in my camp, when this happened, the attack in Gaza City, and it's so difficult to go to Gaza. We went to Rafah because it's 15 minutes, and people would just went in hundreds and thousands, but to the family, only one family in our camp, and they could not go to be with the family in Gaza. So today when I got the news, I was devastated. This is Rafah. Now it's 10th of September, and I try to cross, so every day I have to go and register, and there is very special categories who could leave Gaza prison. Only those who hold visa, foreign visa, or those who hold international or foreigner passport. So there is tens of thousands of people every day just want to go for work reasons, to join their schools, or for patients to go to hospitals, but it's shut by America. I registered and I left Gaza on the 15th of September, sorry. Many young people have been returned. It's so difficult for young people to leave Gaza ghetto. And when I reached Cairo, I got the news that there has been a shipping boat that sank in the Mediterranean. Many of those people were refugees from Gaza. So they escaped the barbarism of this war only to be swallowed by the Mediterranean. Now, what is happening in Rafah? Today, 2 months after the end of the attack, the situation is still the same, and very little change in people's life has occurred. The consequences of the war, let alone the imposed blockade on Gaza, continues to have a devastating effect on the Strip. So people live desperate life, especially the families without shelter. And nowadays, there is 45,000 people still live in the United Nations schools, while other 50,000 people in the people's home. Gaza still suffers from the shortage of power, of water, and homes, as I said. And people are awaiting, since the war ended, for the reconstruction to take place. The United Nations Agency estimates that 100,000 people remain displaced as of 30th of September. Access to the markets and movement of the people remains severely restricted. Rafah crossing has been closed 3 days ago and indefinitely now. The same thing, with the other Karim Abu Salim, the only outlet for Gaza. It has been reported that all the agricultural trucks in its way to West Bank has been returned and cancelled. The Israeli Navy, there has been the agreement on the 26th of August that they would allow 6 miles for the fishermen to fish. This is not happening. According to the PCHR, Palestinian Center for Human Rights, there has been 11 attacks on the fishermen during September alone. 4 fishing boats have been confiscated, and Israeli policies aim to tighten the restriction day after day. If you are following the news, you would hear that on the 12th of October, 90 countries and international organizations attended the Cairo conference to reconstruct Gaza. The event was co-hosted by Norway and by Palestine Authority and Egypt, and a total of $4.4 billion has been pledged as assistance for Gaza. Half of this money would go to the West Bank to fill the holes of the PA budget. And the decisions made in the conference on the reconstruction issues remain completely under Israeli control, and this hinders any practical step that could be taken towards reconstruction. And according to international aid agency Oxfam, building the 89,000 new homes Because yes, we spoke about 18,000 that has been totally destroyed and 35 partially, but now the new statistics has been released by UN and they speak about 90,000 homes and 226 schools and health centers and sanitation required by Gaza could take 50 years under the current Israeli restriction which ban the importation of basic construction material. On the political level, the ministers of PA National Consensus Government visited Gaza and promised to try to deal with people's problem. Similarly, the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has visited Gaza and he said, we stand by you and the international community will stand by you. But all of these words are empty when you talk to the people because nothing is addressing the underlying reasons or factors of this conflict. And nothing would change in Gaza, and nothing would change in West Bank or East Jerusalem until we address this underlying causes of the conflict. So Ban Ki-moon's description of the situation when he said, and now people in my camp as a friends keep laughing and they're at that because he said, build, destroy cycle must be broken, the mindless pattern of blockade and destruction must stop. So whenever I call it, this cycle should be broken, we know, we understand that, but actions, we have been hearing these words time and again, and it means nothing for Palestinians, as I said, as far as no action is taken. And for lasting solution, the occupation and apartheid regime must be dealt with, and peace and prosperity for everyone in the region would follow. Thank you.
In the film from Al Jazeera, there were three people who said that God should punish the Arab regimes. Can you tell us why it's Israel dropping the bombs?
Yeah. People are very, very frustrated. I mean, as they said, we could expect this from our enemy. I mean, you won't expect that enemy would send roses to you. But the complicity of the Arab regime, particularly at this war and previous wars, and let's take example Egypt. Egypt closed the Rafah border during this war. So even the wounded could not be evacuated. International people, doctors who came to help Gaza have been held on the borders. Usually in war, there is a safe passage for people. And we have two lungs. One is called Rafah border with Egypt, and the other one is with Israel. So this time Rafah was closed, even for the basic need, the people who are dying for the medication. So people are so frustrated, are so angry, particularly because part of the misery that Gaza lives today is because of the Arab regime, particularly Egypt, Gaza closing the tunnels. That was the lifeline for people getting everything from medication to arms has been closed. So this is, of course, it has had a severe impact on the people. And this is just one example. So people were very frustrated. It was a minute of despair. And they usually, I don't know how to put it, but we'll leave it. We'll just put this out. We can talk about it again.
Any more questions?
What are the 2 or 3 most important things we can do as individuals to influence this process?
Influence
the outcomes between the Palestinians and the Israelis. What can we do?
What we can do? I think there's lots of things we could do. I mean, if we are Canadian, we have our members of parliament. We want to talk to them. We want to, especially like this school, I have been repeating it all the time during the attack on Gaza. But this doesn't mean that now the attack is finished. On the contrary, now life of Palestinians are getting more difficult. So if there is a time that we want to intensify our action, it's not. It's now. So talking to member of parliament is one of the things. If we speak about influencing policies, following the media, because sometimes you just see this stereotype, the mainstream media that all the time trying to depict that the Palestinians are the terrorists. They're not. I mean, they are the violent people. The Israelis are the victims. So if we want to also try to change this stereotype by writing to the media, by following what the letters or the news reports on our, Canadian screens or Canadian newspapers. So this is two venues we could do to influence policies. We could also, not in terms of influencing policies, but the BDS, the boycott, divestment, and sanction, it's another mean. It's a non-violent way of doing it. And there is, if you just go to the BDS website and see the companies that is complicit in this occupation, that feeding and maintaining it, and to boycott it. More education, more talking. Sometimes I find it even something I could do to talk to my neighbor and just to tell them what is happening. We have to bring as many people and to get them informed, because the change would happen from here. Yes, Palestinians are doing their bit there. Their steadfastness, their resilience, their not giving up. But at the same time, these efforts should be backed from here. So sometimes even if we call the member of parliament and leave a message, we can follow it by a letter. We can follow it by a visit. It's only half an hour from our time. It's a precious time, I understand. But if we give this half an hour, maybe monthly, every 2 months, just to update them. They have to listen. We have no choice but to keep the pressure and to keep the work and to keep the hope. I hope I answered your question.
I have another question, if I could. It's amazed me for many years that the Palestinian people and the Arabic people in Canada have not been nearly as effective as the Israeli support groups. Israeli support groups are highly effective, highly organized. They do a good job in supporting the Israeli people, but it doesn't seem to be there for the supporting the Palestinians. I wonder if that is an avenue to have more effect.
You are right. I mean, now having this crowd gives me some hope. Although, like when I try to count how many Arab people are here, well, there is some, but yes, we want to, actually not we need to do our share. And I think there is lots of community groups now starting to, to see Palestine, the cause again, and try to educate the young people. But you're completely, absolutely right. The Israeli groups or the Zionist groups or the lobby groups are more organized and high efficient than us, and we need lots of work need to be done on this front. I felt it in Europe when I was in Britain. The community there is more organized, and in terms of following even the BDS and holding or arranging session about Palestine and all these awareness events. In North America or Canada in particular, we need to work on this front. So thanks for very much.
Thank you for coming. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. I just started wondering if resisting Israel's occupation should also include resisting them on other human rights violations that they have. Because as I understand it, there's also Palestinians who have Israeli citizenship are also treated as second-class citizens. That was also the case of the displacement of Bedouin populations that's occurring now, and their treatment of African refugees who are also being imprisoned and treated quite poorly and forced to self-deport themselves in order to escape their conditions, and or are being deported without having the human rights assessment that they have. Is there solidarity in that, or is that clouding? Is that something that clouds the issue?
Yeah, for sure there are. I mean, even if you look at the Palestinian groups within the West Bank and Gaza, East Jerusalem, or within Israel, Israeli Jewish people, like if I want to call the organization like PCHR, Al-Haq, Al-Mizan, B'Tselem, Israeli organization, all of these are human rights organizations that is monitoring, and they are on the ground, both in the occupied territories and within Israel, that is monitoring and reporting and documents what is happening and taking it to the court. The next step, of course, is to go to the international court. And you heard about the international court and its opinion with regard to the wall, the separation wall in West Bank. So yeah, there's lots of violation, particularly, not particularly, actually in all the operations or the brutal attacks on Gaza or West Bank. There's cases. The Russell Tribune one in this October, the rapporteur of the United Nations is following. The issue is all documenting and all reporting and in terms of holding Israel accountable for its deeds. That's what is missing. And again, when I started my talk, I said unless they feel the heavy price of their policies and they pay it, they will always keep the pattern of attack, destroy, build, international aid, and all these things. So actions is needed on the international level in particular, and these human rights organizations are working on that. And they are in contact, let's say, with groups like Palestine Solidarity campaigns or all these ICM, which is the International Solidarity Movement. But it needs, a better strategy to how to, concentrate and start to target. This is why I always jump to BDS, because BDS, if you want to boycott, there's lots of things. But if you specify your aims for this month, Bayalla or G4S, we are going to intensify our efforts to war against these companies. So yeah, and it's another call for more organization and more work, but it started, and it's a matter of time that things would result in a positive result.
That's a good question. I mean, one of the things we can focus on over here is that change is going to come about if more pressure is intensified from the outside. What about the efforts from within the community itself, like within the Israeli community, like change from within? Like if there are a sufficient mass of people who essentially believe that what's going on is particularly and morally or ethically wrong, then can you comment on some of the efforts, like critics from within the Israeli society, and what efforts have been undertaken and what are undertaken?
Frankly, we lost hope, because if you look at this operation, you'll find both the left and the right. There, we did not hear any condemnation. Even when we sent this letter of the academics, of the intellectual people, just to say, their reaction or their opinion about what is happening, there is silence. If you just monitor or just watch the news, how much demonstration went into the Israeli streets in protest for Gaza and slaughter, you'll find 2 or 3, perhaps 2,000, 5,000, so the majority was silence. And this silence means that they are in agreement with the government. Yes, there has been lots of efforts during, I would say, maybe 20 years ago, but now rarely you hear it. This government is a right-wing government, and even the left, that they call it Labour Party or Kadima, in a way or another, they are in line with the same policies. And what frustrates you, the academics are the same. The artists are the same, and this is why it comes again. We jump to BDS, cultural boycott, academic boycott, economic boycott. They have to feel that they are paying the price. So there are groups, I am not denying, there is low profile, there is women against occupation, women in black, but when you look to the number and when you look to the actions, it's very small. So yes, the pressure from within is important. They have to work on it, but we as Palestinian side have been very frustrated from the reactions of all these elite and NGOs as well as human rights organizations during this war.
I was wondering what Hamas is going to do about this situation, because they're in part involved with it. with their conflict shooting rockets. What were they doing while this was happening, and what are they going to do to rectify the situation and assist in rebuilding?
You mean about, you ask about the question of records? What would?
Well, yeah, well, Hamas was involved in the situation. What were they doing while this was going on? And what are they going to do now that so many people have been displaced?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Hamas now not in the government. They are the national consensus government. So the resistance and the record, if we want to put it in the context, records are a result of the occupation, are the result of the blockade, are the result of the siege, and not the other way around. We don't, I mean, the Palestinian resistance do not send records because just, hey, hello, we're here. They just want to say we're dying, we're desperate. So the message is not being, heard. So at the moment, yes, you're saying there are lots of homeless people, and this conference that has been held, its job is to try to find shelter to these people. But again, Gaza is not a humanitarian case, and we have always to remind ourselves, this is a mere political issue. We are not poor because we are poor. We are made poor by this occupation. So in the occupation, everyone would be happy. There would be no rockets and nothing. And even if you look to the West Bank, there is no rockets in West Bank. There is no rocket launchers. There is no tunnels. There is no, even what they call it, Hamas and hegemony. There are moderate people there. What the Israelis are doing? They are actually suppressing the moderate people. They are confiscating land. I don't know if you're following the news. The next day after the ceasefire has been signed, it was the largest land grab ever happened in the past 30 years. 4,000 donors of Bethlehem. Bethlehem, the Christ place, has been confiscated. 28th of August, another 2,000 from Yatta, from Hebron. 2 days ago it was in Jerusalem. The day before yesterday they killed a boy in non-violent protest against the war. So the issue is the policies of Israel and inaction of the international community. And the Palestinians all the time, they are passive. If you look to the history, they try the army struggle, they try the peace process, they try the non-violent. What is Israelis want? If they want peace and security, there is a way for that. But unfortunately, this is not the aim, and this is why you put a setback to all these people who had some time hope that one day we could live together. Palestine could be a place for everyone, for all the religions, Israelis and Palestinians, Jews, Christians, and Muslims. So unfortunately, this is not the logic of Israel. This is why I mentioned at the beginning, the logic is still the same. The ideology, the Zionist movement, this colonial, imperial, on all this aid that is given, even now with this destruction, with the $5 billion, believe me, as in 2012 and 2008, 60 to 70% of this aid would end in Israel. They are the beneficiary. All the cement, all of the agreement, all the supplies, all of the things, and it's under their control. So Palestine is not a humanitarian case. Palestine is a political case. If we want to deal with it, we have to deal with it based on equality, freedom, and rights. If this is the solution, everyone will be happy.
Do you find that Israeli bombardment or sieges have become more intense over the past few years?
Very aggressive.
Like, have you found that they've gotten worse? Does it seem like
If you look even to the figures and to the numbers, even if you look at the type of weapon that have been, used, I don't know, from phosphorus, from chemical weapon, from F-16, from the Apache, from everything. If you look to the number of killed people, wounded, so it tells you, it goes from aggressive level to unbelievable level. Every time we say this is the worst, it can't get worse than that, but it does get, because Israel gets away with it every time. And if there's no accountability, unfortunately this is going to happen, and Palestinians have to pay the price, and they have been paying that price all over the past 6.5 decades. So yes, it is getting, because of the lack of the pressure by international community in the country. They are feeding this conflict and maintaining it and funding it. Because the F-16, it's an American airplane. And the Apache,
Any more questions? If we were going to go home and read one book, or get one book tomorrow, what book would you recommend for follow-up?
What book?
What's your favorite? Right now, or 3, or everyone will rush to the library.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, Richard Falk has just released a new book called The Legitimacy of Hope. And he was the UN rapporteur, the former rapporteur of the United Nations on Palestine. Gideon Levy, I mean, his article yesterday in Haaretz, a brilliant Israeli journalist, he's writing and he's saying, I want to write. He has been, of course, writing since the past 30 years, and he said, because in one day, no one would tell me we didn't know. Because the Israelis sometimes say, we don't know that the Palestinians live in this misery and all this has happened. So he writes, and he's, threatened, and he's in the blacklist, and he's harassed, and he said, I am writing so that the next generation, they say, we don't know, no, you know very well what is happening. So Ghada Ageel is another book to read. Noam Chomsky also has been writing frequently about all this context of ISIS and the Arab Spring and Palestine, Israel, and all it's in a context. If we just look to the bigger picture, because Palestine is the central, but if you look to the bigger picture, it gives you lots of answers to many questions.
Is there a local campaign for the University of Alberta to divest with its different funds?
I'm not aware of. Today I got the news that my university, Exeter University, voted for boycott the Israelis. But here it is, we need that for Exeter. But I'm not aware of.
I don't think so.
Yeah. But this is a good step, a good thing to work on.
Are there any cities that are divesting? I mean, Edmonton could take a stance as a city. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
The Ontario Union's universities recently passed, so this was over 100 universities and colleges in Ontario passed
Possible. You feel the shift. Like sometimes I feel very, very hopeless, but you just look around you and even read history books in particular, so that you just try to give yourself a lift. So even when I went to Gaza, people say, "Where do you get your store of hope?" I said, "From the people." And now when read in the Guardian newspaper, there has been a lot of 70 thinkers, among them 7 Nobel Prize winners, saying Israel they have to impose embargo, military embargo on Israel. So you find the shift in people, into intellectuals. Yesterday in America, they prevented the Israeli company Zim from uploading and downloading the ship in the seaport. So, I mean, people are doing these small things, and this is what we want, to keep the momentum. Small thing, but it would get bigger, and with mine it would get bigger, and if you write to your MP, it would be good. If I write to the media, it would be good. If we boycott, it would be good. If we urge University of Alberta to divest, I think this collective work of all people, mere people, we are not going to wait for the government. As I said, they are do-nothing government. They are complicit in this occupation. They are profiting from this occupation. So the hope is left with us, the people. Because pain, at the end of the day, has no nation. Pain has no nation. If she is a Palestinian mother, or Canadian mother, or Israeli mother, loss is loss. And at the end of the day, when you switch the light and you close the door and your son is not there, and your home is not there, and your country is not there, and you have no tomorrow, it's difficult. It's difficult. This is why I say it's our responsibility and our obligation at the same time as people with conscience, so that one day we are not judged by history.
I wonder if you could give us some ideas on how we can protest against the occupation and the apartheid in Israel without being accused of being anti-Semitic. That seems to be any criticism is automatically labeled as an anti-Semite. And we have to be careful not to be anti-Semitic, but to be pro-human rights.
Yeah. Just say the truth. Say the truth, the naked truth. Unfortunately, even with that, they will accuse you. I mean, and we have to be ready to pay the price. I know that. Like Richard Falk is a Jewish, Noam Chomsky is Jewish. The Judge Goldstone is a Jewish himself. And all these people just step and stood up and said the fact, despite all their work to support Israel, they are accused of anti-Semitism. So I really find myself in this comfortable position to say, if you do that, they won't. As soon as you step in this area, criticizing Israeli policies, right away, you are anti-Semitic. So, but as I said, stick to that rule. Even when I talk, I am an academic, and they always advise me to put all the hats. I put all the hats. I put myself as an Israeli mother's shoes who has a record in her home. And this, I feel her. I feel her. I talk in her behalf, and I talk on the behalf of my people. I say the truth, so I am not afraid if they want to tell me you're not saying the truth. No, I say it because I left it. So when you base your information in informed resources and in real facts and numbers, I think it just speaks by itself. But that said, yes, they would accuse you of, unfortunately, of that thing. But as I said, being informed, education, awareness, this is the best thing.